I'm wearing a sweater vest today to channel my inner awkward Major Ram for this video.
Good for you.
Oh, and I bought a microphone. This should hopefully help with the audio a little bit more, but I primarily bought it just so I could have something to hold and feel a little less awkward while sitting in front of a camera. Talking. Anyway, now that we have that flawless intro out of the way, let's get to the main topic of this video, which is Main Hoon Na. Farah Khan's debut movie before she made the iconic Om Shanti Om, and a few other not so great movies. Okay, so first, let's do a recap, even though everyone probably knows this movie inside out, but this is where we get the funny editing in. Okay, so we start with General Bakshi, played by Kabir Bedi, who sounds like he could give any Disney villain a run for their money. General Bakshi is being interviewed on TV for Project Milap, which is kind of a peace initiative between India and Pakistan. Now, the villain, appropriately named Raghavan, played by Suniel Shetty, doesn't like this because he is a but he claims to have India's best interests at heart. Before we move on, let's appreciate Raghavan's iconic hair in this movie. He is one of the few Bollywood villains with genuinely the best hair out there. So, Raghavan interrupts the interview and starts threatening people. This is where our main character Major Ram, played by Shah Rukh Khan, enters.
You're not lie. You're not die.
Anyway, Major Ram's father, played by Nasiruddin Shah, gets shot, and before he departs the earthly planes, he decides to drop a major bomb on his son. Major Ram is his father's illegitimate son. His actual wife and legitimate son left him years ago when Major Ram was dropped off at his father's door as a child. And now his father's last wish is that both of his sons perform his last rites. Now, General Bakshi's daughter Sanjana, played by Amrita Rao, has been threatened by Raghavan. So General Bakshi tasks Major Ram to go undercover and join Sanjana at her college as a student. He agrees because he also has to find his half-brother, who coincidentally goes to the same college as Sanjana. Okay, so Ram goes to college and it's pretty awkward at first. He's 10 years older than everyone and nobody wants to be his friend. He meets Sanjana and her friend Lucky, which he later on learns is his brother. Eventually, after saving Lucky's life, Major Ram becomes friends with all of the goofy characters there. We meet Percy, Raki Sawan before she became iconic.
Mode of payment.
Mera mood hi nahi hai payment ke liye. We meet Miss Kakkar, Bomin Irani as the principal, and Miss Chandani, who eventually becomes Major Ram's love interest. Also, I'm not sure what degree this class is majoring in at college because they get taught subjects like chemistry, physics, but then also Hindi. Anyway, back to the movie. Major Ram has moved in as a paying guest with Lucky and his mum, and he starts bonding with them. Raghavan, in the meantime, has discovered that Major Ram has gone undercover as a student, so now Raghavan has gone undercover as a teacher. We get to the third act where Major Ram's cover is blown because Raghavan tells on him, so now Lucky and his mother discover who he really is. Raghavan, in the meantime, holds a bunch of students at the college hostage. Then Major Ram saves the day, kills the villain, reconciles with his family. The end. Okay, so moving on to the review of the actual story. First of all, we have a perfectly flawed hero. Now, for a main character to be fully fleshed out, there are quite a few things that he or she should have, but it can really boil down to three main things. First of all, we have a problem that the main character needs to solve. This is usually where the external conflict and the main plot comes in. Then we have a want. This is where we understand what the main character's desires, wishes, and hopes for his or her life are. And then finally, we have a need. This is usually where the main character learns a lesson, overcomes a fear, or generally transforms as a character, and therefore that need, overcoming it, presents itself in the form of a character arc. The audience doesn't want to watch a hero that has all of their shit together. Perfect heroes are boring, they're unrealistic, and most importantly, they're unrelatable. If the hero is perfect, they have nothing to learn. If they have no problems, the plot becomes meaningless. An example that I think really works here would be Sid from Wake Up Sid. At the beginning of the movie, Sid is a brat. He goes to college, but he doesn't study. He fails his exams, but doesn't care. He has no plan and doesn't want to work. Rather, he wants to live off of his parents' money.
Can't you see I don't care about your stupid office?
What do you care about, Siddharth?
Then he gets kicked out of the house and is forced to make it on his own and eventually learn the value of earning your own money. If Sid didn't have all of these flaws at the beginning of the movie, there would be nothing for him to learn. It's because he doesn't value working hard or the life that his parents built that allows him to live the way he does that he gets kicked out. If he valued all of this in the first place, there would literally be no story to tell. He would be working a job that he really loves, and as an audience, we would not be invested in his character. In Main Hoon Na's case, if Major Ram had a family that really loved him, his personal stakes would be much lower in the story. There would be no challenge for him to get into the friend group at college. He wouldn't have to hide his true identity from his family by posing as a paying guest, and as an audience, we'd be much less invested in what happens to him as the hero. Okay, next up we have internal versus external conflict. In the most basic sense, a story is a main character or hero's journey to achieve a want or goal. It's how that journey changes the main character or what they learn during this journey that presents itself in the form of a character arc. Now, the hero's want or goal needs to be ideally challenged by two things, which are the external and the internal conflict. Overcoming the internal conflict becomes the character arc. Overcoming the external conflict becomes the plot. Just like a character's flaws, the reason why we need these challenges is that if there's nothing preventing them from achieving what they want, they would have already achieved it by now, and there would be no story to tell. For Main Hoon Na, we have a clear internal and external conflict. Jam goes to Darjeeling to protect both Sanjana and Fina's family. The first becomes a challenge because of Raghavan. The second becomes a challenge because of his unresolved family situation, a feeling of abandonment, and the last-minute reality change that his father decided to impart him with. Also, more of a subplot, but I think it fits really well with the internal conflict, is that Major Ram is a cool, collected, duty-bound soldier, and then he goes to college after 10 years. In fact, he never went to college, he went to army school. He's 10 years older than everybody else, and he doesn't fit in. So he really feels like a fish out of water. And it just makes for a really good subplot that adds a lot of life to the story. Okay, next up we have good side characters. Whether it's Lucky, played by Zaid Khan, and his awkward acting.
यहाँ पे तुम्हारी उम्र का कोई है ही नहीं.
Okay, so Lucky and Sanjana have their own backstories, wants and problems, where Lucky wants to stay in college because he doesn't want to face the reality of life. He feels rejected because of his father and he feels abandoned, so he has a grudge against his father. And Sanjana's backstory is actually pretty similar because she feels like she was never accepted by her father, so she has her own issues. Actually, come to think of it, quite a few of the characters have daddy issues, but it adds really well to the main theme of the movie, which is fan family. Speaking of fan family as a theme, it's one that's worked quite well for other movies, but it adds a whole new layer to Main Hoon Na because of its light-hearted tone. Outside of these few main characters, we do see a little less backstory or what's important to other side characters. It would have been nice, for example, to get a little more backstory on Miss Chandni. It just feels like she's there to serve as the love interest for Shah Rukh Khan's character, and that is about it. We don't really know who she is, where she's from, what's important to her, other than, you know, she loves the wind machine. But other than that, we have some pretty memorable and goofy characters like Percy, Miss Kakkar, Mr. Rasai, the principal. I think this was Boman Irani's first role. Yeah, he was pretty iconic. All of them add a lot of life to the story. Also, has anyone noticed that Nasiruddin Shah does this whole play a dad with secrets gig quite often? Oh, I almost forgot about our villain. Going back to the backstory thing, one thing that works well for the villain in this story is that he actually has a backstory and a personal vendetta. The way this was incorporated into the story also works really well because you get snippets that get revealed to the audience as and when it's important, and it gradually adds layers to Raghavan's character, raises the stakes, and improves pacing. Also, I know I mentioned his hair before, but can we just have some appreciation for it? Everyone keeps talking about Miss Chandni and the wind machine and her hair, but I think the villain deserves equal appreciation.
बाल काले हो जाने पर कुछ ना कुछ तो फर्क पड़ जाएगा.
अरे बाल तो काले हो जाएंगे, मगर इस झुर्रियों वाले चौकटे का हम क्या करूंगा?
Okay, so finally, one thing that I really loved was the amalgamation of different genres. We get action, drama, romance, comedy, generally going over the top, but really playing into it. And I think obviously this movie really set the bar for Farah Khan's masala movies. From Professor Asai's whole spit gag to the principal forgetting literally everything to the musical numbers, everything was amazing. This movie is essentially a Bollywood buffet. Okay, and then finally, some things that could have improved the story.
You
I think getting a little more backstory and complexity would have worked really well for the villain. And I know I mentioned there is backstory, there is a personal vendetta. And his personal vendetta seemed like it could have been more explored to add complicated layers to him as a character. But generally, when you look at how villains have been played in Bollywood, they tend to be pretty one-dimensional, especially in the older movies.
Bloody fool!
ये तो फेल हो गया.
पास कर देते हैं इसे.
सच कहता हूँ मधु, बहुत पछतावा है.
So as a comparison, Raghavan worked really well. And for the type of movie that this was, you know, more light-hearted, focusing on the Bollywood masala type of acting, I think it still worked really well. We have limited female characters with actual presence in the movie. We obviously have Sanjana, who has her own backstory and problems and wants. We have Lucky's mum, played by Kiran Kid. And then we have Miss Chandni, who doesn't have a backstory. So I think getting complicated female characters would have done wonders for this movie. Other than that, this movie is a little bit over the top, but I think it worked really well. I personally love it, and I think Farah Khan did a stellar job as a debut director. So yeah, I guess that's it for Main Hoon Na, folks.
Over and out.
Tango and Cash.
Each man for himself.
Okay.